Go live and we'll see how well this works. So this is my first time streaming on somebody else's stream key. So to everybody who might be watching right now, be aware. I'm pulling up to make sure at the moment that it is all working, and it is. And now people are going to hear that muted back at them, which is not ideal. But at least everything is working. So a few things to start off the bat. You're going to notice two boxes below the main chat thing. That is stuff usually relevant to when I do these streams on my channel. However, I didn't want to presume to use them for Steve. So first things first, I am Mr. Atheist. I'm clearly not Steve McRae. Steve isn't feeling very good, so he asked me if I would step in and moderate this debate. My channel is Mr. Atheist. I'm at Dear Mr. Atheist on Twitter. You might know me from my Thursday show, Dear Mr. Atheist, where we answer the questions that are asked of atheists over and over and over again. And if you can't tell, this was sort of decided last minute. So after the debate starts, as these gentlemen are talking, you'll probably see me like redoing my hair, for example. We're gonna sort of stall here for just a minute to let a few more viewers get in. What I want to do real quick is actually make sure that everybody can hear the two of you. So starting with virtual, would you just give like a countdown from 5?
5, 4, 3, 2, 1,
and
0.
If the live chat could just confirm for me real quick that anybody can hear, could hear that countdown. And actually, as long as they can hear one of you, they should hear both of you. I'm only assuming that you're hearing me in the first place. Yep, audio is good. Okay, I'm going to look at my levels a little bit. Perfect. And Faye on you apparently is trolling. So thanks. Like and subscribe. I won't. I abuse my own followers, so I was about to call you a name, but I won't. I won't presume to do that on Steve's. So today we are debating the proposition of evolution versus non-evolution. However, I understand that we are going to hear something we haven't heard before, which is a non-creationist alternative to evolution. So very much looking forward to that. We'll go ahead and get started with a 2-minute period to each person to introduce themselves, plug their channel. And actually, let's just, if you guys don't mind, I'm going to make this 1 minute. Just say your own name. Don't introduce your ideas or anything. Just your own name, your channels. I think a minute is enough for that, yeah? Or anything you want to plug. Good enough? All right, Virtual, go ahead.
Well, you told me just to introduce my name, Virtual Maya. I do have a channel if you want to see it. It's really just what I call consciousness centrism. I don't know what else to say if you don't want me to go into any more detail.
Yeah, we'll wait till the debate starts for more detail. Yeah. Plug your channel. Do you have a Twitter handle or anything else you want to plug to?
No, just Virtual Maya. I'm not trying to promote my channel, but that's where I come from. That's me introducing myself.
Gotcha. Okay. All right then. Do you want me to call you Jimmy, or is there we'll have two Jimmys to make everything confusing?
You can call me Jim to differentiate me from you.
All right, cool. I'm not going to, you should call me Mr. Atheist. No, go ahead and introduce yourself if you have a channel, anything there.
I don't have a channel. My name is Jim Hill. I live in Southern Ohio. I'm an avid fossil hunter. I love watching the great debate community, Steve's channels, learning more about biology, philosophy. And so in that kind of idea, I talk to a lot of people online. I don't have a Twitter. I don't have a YouTube channel. I'm on Facebook. If you have anyone can add me as a friend, discuss stuff. But I'm just here to talk to Virtual today about his objections to evolution today.
Great. All right. Well, unless there's any other concerns from either of you, I'm going to set the timer for 3 minutes, and we will start with Virtual. Virtual, go ahead and introduce the side you're coming from, what it is you primarily disagree with. So what we're going to do for the people watching at home, we're going to do 3-minute sessions until it feels like that has burnt out. It's probably only a couple, and then we'll switch to a discussion where they can back and forth, and I'll be here to make sure that nobody yells over the other, and I have muting powers where I need them. So but for the moment, you have 3 minutes to yourself, virtual. Go ahead and start whenever you're ready.
All right, got it. I have an alternate model. It's really just called consciousness centrism. It is a godless model. Think of it as a mental simulation where the Earth is more of an environment pre-furnished with life. I promote the orchard of life, not the tree of life. This isn't creationism, as there's no God. It's not intelligent design, as there's no aliens or anything. It's not simulation theory, because there's no computer. It's really just consciousness as an eternal constant. It's irreducible and fundamental, right? It's just watching things happen. Essentially, consciousness naturally hallucinates realities analogous to dreams or video games or virtual reality. As I said, it's analogous, however you say that, and it's more information based. It's not solipsism as it operates on the network of minds. Think of it like the only way I could describe it is just with analogies. Think of a cloud that we're all dreaming in, and we're all participating in this virtual cloud. So it's not solipsism. My deal with science is that the current structure of science is flawed because they will never be able to figure things out with, for example, last Thursdayism. If the world did come up last Thursday, they would never figure it out. Science is about finding a model that works, and it's good at that, and it's good for developing technologies, but it has some flaws in it. Evolution has a lot of logical fallacies in it, and a lot of semantic deceptions, and it doesn't make more sense. Nothing makes sense in the light of evolution as it's claimed. It actually brings up more questions than it answers. Let's see.
Little less than a minute left.
No less than a minute. All right. Does it operate off of theoretical events such as Big Bang, abiogenesis, evolution, or objective materialism? There's no pseudoscience that goes into it, which I would argue that evolution has a lot of pseudoscience and a lot of pseudo evidences. No hoaxes, propaganda, psyops, gaslighting, smoke and mirrors, no confirmation bias, no cherry picking. Conspiracies are considered, but they're considered within reason, and none of this falsification nonsense that it has to go to. There's no space, no dinosaurs, no spinning Earth. The round Earth has never been sighted, but it's not a flat Earth model. It's more like a stellarium world. It's not a planet; it's a virtual environment. The lineages don't merge as you go back. Each lineage, biological lineage, has its own independent lineage.
All right, that's
So,
it.
all right.
Yeah, and actually, if I can ask, it's not a sides question, so I want to ask a question. Just give you a few seconds to respond to that, because I think it's sort of important to some of the context that you gave so far. So just a quick response to how certain would you say you are? You could do on a scale of 1 to 10 that your model more accurately represents reality than the evolution model.
90%.
90%. Okay, cool. You don't feel like that question was unfair, right? Wasn't setting you up for anything. I just want to make sure that didn't. Okay, cool. All right, Jimmy. 3 minutes on the on the clock for you. Start whenever, and I'll hit that button.
Okay. Well, my position for Joe's model is just I can't test this model at all. When he proposes that things were simulated, just recently, that things don't have common ancestors, there's no way to test that. What I'm trying to get tonight is the importance of falsification of a model. Test this model, we can't determine whether it's true or not. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying I can't determine it's true, and I don't understand how you got to this model is true, as you've asserted before. On the claim of evolution, do I believe in evolution? Yes. The evidence that I've gone through so far, what evolution is, which is just genetic change in a population over generations, over time. It can be small, it can be large, noticeable or not, but it's just genetically passed down to the next generation. There's always change, and these changes have added up over time. We can look at these changes through genetics. We can look at it through the fossil record, which is a real thing. And the more I watch these kind of videos, these discussions on this channel, the more I learn. I want to discuss these ideas. I want to put these models to the test. If it's true, it should be tested. And I'll concede the rest of my time because I want to get to Joe's model some more.
Get to the meat and potatoes, so to speak, right?
Absolutely.
All right, cool. We will, Joe, I'm going to give you another 3 minutes, but I think he raised some good points there about, he's suggesting that falsification is important. He's suggesting that your proposal is non-falsifiable. So keep those things in mind as you go ahead and answer, and just start whenever you want. We'll do the next 3 minutes. And to those asking, I found out I was moderating this 10 to 20 minutes prior to us going live. So I don't have a timer ready for you to see. I'm literally using my iPhone, so I apologize for that. But I will try, and I'll start giving you the 1 minute warning, and then again at 30 seconds. So whenever you're ready, Virtual, if you want to take over, go ahead.
Yeah, how I come to this conclusion is for debunking evolution. And second of all, it is more deducible in a lot of ways. I hope we have enough time to actually deduce it. And it is observable. It doesn't need to be tested by any means. This falsification nonsense is not a path to truth by any means. Like I said, if the world was created last Thursday, for example, science would never figure it out. Or if we're our brain in the vats, science would never figure it out. There needs to be a way to test these kinds of outrageous, unfalsifiable claims. If science can't test unfalsifiable claims, what good is science other than making technology, other than science is really good. We all know that. But there's a part of it that many people don't disagree on, and we fall to a false dichotomy of creation or science, right? Those aren't your only two options. You got other options, which is my model, which is not my model. It's really an ancient mystic model of consciousness being the eternal constant and just watching what happens around it. Consciousness hallucinates naturally, and it just does. This is all we are. The earth is as old as we are. It's not, we don't really know how old it is, but we speculate it is. So I like to start off, if I have enough time, defining your, all right, your evolution is I like to talk about the macro part of it, how you define macroevolution as speciation. Speciation may be a macroevolution, but macroevolution is not speciation. Speciation isn't going to cause a bacteria to evolve into a human. You could also define that as major evolutionary transition. But there's only a set amount of species on Earth, and the rest of them are varieties within those species. So if you get a new variety, that doesn't count as a new species. That's just semantics and moving the goalpost.
45 seconds.
Okay, so I want to talk about macroevolution and how they're using words. If you get a new variety of blueberries, they call that a new species, but it's still a blueberry. That seconds. Will not drive a bacteria into a human.
You want to leave it there?
Yep.
Okay. A lot to unpack. I hope you were taking notes over there, Jimmy. Maybe you don't need to. I know I do. But anytime you're ready, go ahead and start your next 3 minutes.
Yeah, I just want to be fair to you. I broke up a little bit in the middle, but I got most of what you said. Your problem is that the labels that we're using, you don't want to use macroevolution. You want to say new varieties. And that's because what you're observing is that nothing ever leaves its parental clade. Blueberries will always produce blueberries, new varieties of blueberries, new clades of blueberries, but they'll always belong to the blueberry kind. That's a concept we've been discussing a lot that I think we need to focus on in here. So if humans evolved into, say, human A and human B populations, they're still humans. they're new varieties of humans, what you call, but if they can no longer interbreed, they would be a new species. And macroevolution is evolution at and above the species level. Now, we've seen this in other animals. We've had where, like cats, we can agree that cats have a common ancestor, but there are certain cats breed anymore. They're infertile with each other. There's no interbreeding. You can have some interbreeding, like tigers and lions, if you have enough genetic, closeness to it. But once the branches diverge too far apart, you're not going to get interbreeding between each other. But all those branches are always going to never leave their parental clade, whatever that is, that will remain it. That's why we're still apes. That's why we're still monkeys. That's why we're still mammals. Humans are a variety of apes. Apes are a variety of monkeys. Monkeys are a variety of mammals. We have different varieties. We have different splitting of clades, but they never leave the parental group.
1 minute.
You claim that independent lineages and that they do not have common ancestors. Do you have any evidence for this claim?
The burden of proof isn't on me.
Well, give it a second here. Give it a second. So you're yielding the rest of your time, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Go ahead. Anytime you're ready to start 3 minutes. I just needed a second to reset the timer. Go ahead.
So I'm going to talk about the people A and people B you brought up. If people A cannot reproduce with people B, you say it would be a new species. I would argue it would be a sexually isolated variety or a sexuated variety. I wouldn't call it a new species. That's being having semantic deception. And B, and on the other thing you talked about, because that species never increase with time. It always decreases with extinction. So speciation is nothing more than a sexual occurrence, a reproductive occurrence that happens in nature. It has nothing to do with evolution, new species, right? It's still people. Whether it's black people cannot no longer reproduce with white people, they're not different species. They're still the same species. They're both humans, but they're sexually isolated. Now, on the thing you were saying that it never branches out from the clades, all right, we didn't evolve from apes. Well, we are apes, but what I'm trying to say is don't listen carefully. Apes is not a species. You can't evolve from something that's not a species. We only evolve from other species. So saying we evolved from apes is not even right because that's a clad label. Now, I wouldn't argue that we're not animals. We are apes.
Oh,
I
boy.
wouldn't say we evolved from a common ancestor of monkeys. Yeah, that's what I'm. I do say that the burden of proof isn't on me to say that all our lineages merge together the far back you go. I would say all the lineages run parallel. I'm going to show you this. That's what I argue for. And like I said in my introduction, how did that happen? Earth environment, Earth came pre-furnished with life. So it came pre-furnished. So it didn't have to start off with some abiogenesis is chemical evolution and biological evolution is with DNA. So you're saying essentially we evolved from hot, bubbly mineral water into humans. I don't buy that, and I could go into more detail on that a little bit, but
yeah, I think if that's where you want to yield the time, I think we're already kind of getting to a place where we probably just need to open this up to conversation. What I want to remind each of you is we're not going to allow any gish galops. You're going to keep your galops to yourself. So in other words, if you make a claim and it's clear the other person wants to respond, go ahead and respond. Obviously, sometimes a claim needs a little bit fleshing out. So we're talking about evolution. So do respect each other. I don't want to have to mute or anything, but you guys have been calm and collected so far, so I'm not too worried. I will jump in here and there with questions. If in the live chat you'd like to ask either person a question, just make sure that you tag me at Mr. Atheist because I am streaming through. Thank you to that car person and the guy with the small penis that needed everyone to know about it. I don't know if you all heard that car flying by my house, but If you have a question, just make sure you tag me so that it gets highlighted. I'm at Mr. Atheist. I'm not Steve McRae. Again, if you're just joining, Steve is sick tonight, but he asked me to moderate this discussion. So we're going to jump into the discussion portion. I don't know for sure how long we'll go because I don't know what's going to happen. Anyway, once again, if you have questions, tag at Mr. Atheist. I'm in there in the live chat watching. But otherwise, virtual, you did go last, so I'm going to let Jimmy pose the first question or make the first point to get the conversation started.
Okay. Joe, what predictions can your model make? What can we test today? What's a prediction your model makes that we can test and either falsify or support your model?
My model predicts all the same predictions as the alternate model, which is your model. It's all the same predictions. So give me an example of your model and I'll rival it with the same predictions. So your model, let me give you an example. You find fossils in a layer that there's no mammals, right?
Yes.
Well, first of all, have you ever even found a mammal fossil?
No, I haven't personally found a fossil that's with a mammal because that's not the area I'm searching in. I'm in southern Ohio. I search in the Cincinnati Arch. The layers I have access to, those are Ordovician layers mostly.
And it's a hill?
I'd have to go to another state to go.
Is it higher altitude?
Where I find the fossils is I'll drive around the highway, and where I find a road cut where it's eroded away and they've cut to make room for the road, you can see exposed rock layers. And if you know which layers to look for in which areas, you can go fossil hunt, and they'll just literally fall out of the side of the hills near the highway. That's where I find a lot of fossils. I also, Caesars Creek State Park, which is in a dam, they cut down through the earth to remove a whole bunch of, to make a spillway. And so we've cut down into layers, and you can see all the layers. You can fossil hunt just in the dry spillway.
It just doesn't sound like mammals fossilize as easy as critters that you find in the mostly water-based critters.
Yeah, the Ordovician, I'm seeing ancient seafloor creatures. You don't see mammals because there's nothing there. If whales existed at the beginning of time, like we'll just go quickly to the creation thing. They say all the life was created at the beginning. Well, I don't find whale bones in these layers. I find trilobites, I find brachiopods, I find crinoids. I don't find, aquatic mammals or reptiles.
All right, so I'm not a fossil hunter, and I think if I were a fossil hunter, I'd actually have a different perspective on it. But my model also predicts that if the Matrix wanted to, it could make these life forms more complex as it goes on. It didn't have to evolve from each other. They just emerged from the reality as it is. But another prediction that my model has is that this is kind of a common argument, but dogs produce dogs, humans produce humans. I know the law of monophyly and the law of clades also says that, but mine goes a little bit more with intuition. I know if a mother and a father have a kid, and another mother and father have a kid, they're both going to be kids, humans, and then they have kids. They're always going to be humans, and there's these gene parameters or this genetic framework. It's never going to stop being a human. It's never going to turn to an avatar. It's never going to evolve wings. Granted that there's no goal in evolution. But yeah, just like the picture I showed you, humans will always make humans.
Go ahead. Sorry. If I've got some from the chat too. Whenever.
Okay, just real quick. So humans always produce humans. That's what's predicted by my model. That's what's predicted by your model. It's not something. Well, how do I differentiate that? No, this model isn't the real explanation. It's your model.
Your model says that humans won't always necessarily produce humans, that someday they'll turn into blue avatars.
No, it does. Humans will always.
Let me jump in because I think I might have an example to clear this up a little bit. So this is I stole this from Matt Dillahunty. I try to always give credit, but so a good illustration of what the evolutionary model says, and I'm just trying to clarify. I'm not trying to debate back. Is it's essentially the way this transition happens is we identify what we used to call Homo erectus. Now we identify what we call Homo sapien. However, if you do this with language and you go with Latin to Spanish, when was the exact moment a Latin mother gave birth to a Spanish child? There isn't an exact moment that it happens, but we do now identify as what is modernly spoken as Spanish and what was previously spoken as Latin. So I don't know if that clarification helps you out there, Virtual, but
it's a gradient, right?
Yeah, to some degree, sure. But we don't identify the precise moment that it transitions from one to the other.
It's more or less speculation that you think that a rat could evolve into the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Splinter and talk someday. I mean, that's ridiculous. But evolution says that is a possibility. I think a rat will always produce a rat. Big rats, small rats. Yeah. But evolution is the change in the allele frequency in the population over time. So if all humans became redheads, that would be evolution. That would be microevolution, but those little features, those little traits will never add up to something significant.
Why not?
There's these gene parameters I was talking about that hasn't been disproven.
What gene parameters?
That the human DNA, the human genome will always be a human genome, or the rat genome will always be a rat genome and never evolve into Splinter. That would require...
Wait. So I want clarification on what you're saying. The rat genome will always be the rat genome. I actually agree with that. That doesn't mean that the ancestors of rats or that the eventual offspring of rats will have what we consider the rat genome. Or are you saying that is what that means? Because that's not my understanding.
I'm saying the rat's lineage has always been a rat. Always, all the way to the past, all the way to the future. It won't ever change. Small things would change, like the color or the weight. Certain things would change. That's just little minor things would change. So macroevolution will never happen outside of speciation. What you call speciation, what I call sexually isolated communities.
Whoa.
You see what I've been talking
Jimmy,
with?
Go ahead.
I think a good example would be poodles or dogs. There haven't always been poodles. So a poodle is some point, there was a poodle that came from something that was not a poodle, not the parents, because the parent will always give birth to the same species, but the population changes over time. It's generations upon generations when you start to see these big changes. You've asked me to show a whole millions of years of change right now. And I can't do that. That's a lot of change. I can show you a little bit of changes, and I can show you how they can possibly build up. I can go back through the fossil record and show you, here's how we think these lineages go. Here's how we support it. Your model, I have no idea how to test anything.
But Jimmy, you wouldn't say that your model, you can't, you were just listing things you can do. You cannot go find a Precambrian rat, correct?
No, I would love to find a mammal in a Precambrian rock or any mammal.
If you found a rat mammal, how do you know how old it is? I know you can date it, but
if I go where I fossil hunt normally, and I go where you normally find Ordovician layer fossils, so if I can find a trilobite with a mammal, if I find something weird, I go to one of the experts that live near me. There's the House of Phacops is like an hour away from me, near Peebles. There's a guy who just studies trilobite fossils. You know, there's the dry dredgers in Ohio. I can go to those guys. If I find something that's like, hey, is this a mammal? Because I just found it in Ordovician rock and that shouldn't happen. I'll show people. I'm on the lookout for that. That's what I actually do for fun.
But my model doesn't say that you wouldn't necessarily find anything different. For example, one thing, if I found a rat fossil, how do I know that's not just as old as the fossils you're finding? But on another subject, I'm saying you don't know if the operating system that we're living in didn't emerge life in the way that you're finding it. Didn't have to evolve from one another. It could have just been simple, complex, complex, complex,
So virtual,
without evolution.
how does anybody watching determine? Because you're saying that nothing in our model, or we'll say Jimmy's model, but no, I do subscribe to the evolutionary model as well. Nothing in his model you wouldn't expect it in your model. How do we go about determining who's correct? And so if you could answer that,
Sure.
we'll let Jimmy
Yeah.
respond, and then I'd like to start doing questions and responses from the audience.
All right, so evolution makes sense, right? It
Indeed.
does, but superficially it makes sense. Once you start asking some deep questions about evolution, it starts to fall apart. Can you explain the evolution of the butterfly and its metamorphosis process? Can you
Nope, I
explain
don't really know that much.
mushroom evolution? How did mushrooms evolve?
Well, I think we could both give you the explanation of how. It feels a little bit more like you're asking why, because the how evolution happens literally is the same with every single thing. Very minute changes over time with pressure from natural selection, which decides what stays and what goes. I mean, that's the how, but it seems like you're asking the why, and I'm not sure the why is always the scientific question. What the evolutionary pressures were. I'm just trying to keep this on topic, and again, I'm not trying to make it 2 against 1. I'm trying to make it clear that I'm not certain that that's the correct question.
All right, and also I'm just giving you a quick list of things. This is mostly for people to think about on their own. But if you want to think about how butterflies evolved or how mushrooms evolved to be, there's also evolution in any way. For example, from eukaryote.
We lost you there. Jimmy, do I still have you, or did I lose you both?
I can hear you. I can't hear him no more.
Okay, we lost him. So hopefully we get him back shortly, and we'll start on these viewer questions. So again, if you're just joining, sorry for all the boxes that are empty. Those are all set up to my streams on my channel, which is Mr. Atheist, my show, Dear Mr. Atheist. Steve is sick at the moment. Hopefully we will have Jimmy, virtual back here in a moment. But it's been interesting so far. I don't know what else to put on it. Some of the questions are really good. Seraph, I'm going to try my best. I don't do a very good Morty impression yet. So Seraph wants to know if his model is just solipsism with that just sounds like solipsism with extra steps. Which, yeah, fair enough. But hopefully I'll send him a message. Hopefully we can get him back here. I'm going to be very interested to see if he has a reasoning for how he came to the conclusion. But let me send a message and see. Are you coming back in?
I sent him a message too.
So hopefully again, I'm trying to do my best to not to remain unbiased, but like that last question, the questions of whys are interesting, but right now we only have, and Jimmy, maybe you disagree, but we only have hypothetical whys. We only have like this trait. Here's a reason, here's a line of reasoning of what those pressures might have selected for because something with this in this environment. But I don't think we have anything that we elevate to the level of theory, or am I wrong on why a specific trait evolved, like metamorphosis?
Yeah, what we do is we make models, we test it. We're not trying to prove things in science. We're trying to disprove the models and see if we can poke holes in it.
Right.
Yeah. So for instance, while we're still waiting on him, see if I can get this right. Yeah. This is a piece of sea floor from the Ordovician area. This is stuff I find in Ohio. These are easy fossils to find. All you got to do is look. It's not a hard thing to do. I promote fossil hunting if anybody wants to go out. This is just a death matrix of a bunch of brachiopods. I wish I had a better camera. Oh,
Now, if you look closely, do you see a rat in there anywhere? I'm just curious. I'm trying to provide some
nope.
comic relief for the people.
Yeah, I'll send some better pictures on like the Facebook link if there's ever a page if we discuss this. But there's a little gastropod, a little snail in there. There's the what looks like little clams. They're brachiopods. There's little bits and pieces of broken shells, but I don't see any mammals. I don't see anything that looks like a vertebrate. I don't see anything out of place. I keep looking for them because that's something that at least part of this model. If I could find a whale or a mammal, anything in this fossil layer, I'm going to somebody who knows what they're talking about. I'm going to point it out to them.
Gotcha. Well, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give Virtual 5 more minutes, and we can talk about whatever in the meantime. If he doesn't make it back in 5-ish minutes, what I'll probably do is start sending a Hangouts link, unless Steve sends me a message and says absolutely not. But I'll start sending a Hangouts link to a few other people who might want to join and discuss the topic. But what I feel like he is representing is that his model. So I think, and maybe I'm wrong, and what's worse is maybe I'm going to make his argument better than it was ready to be. But I'll try and play a little devil's advocate here. In his matrix, I was going to call it theory, but let's be real, matrix hypothesis, the idea is, you asked about predictive power. So one of the impressive predictive powers of evolution is the ability to go, hypothetically, this fossil representing an animal of some kind that exists somewhere between this species and this species would be found in this geographical area, and we would have to dig down to roughly this layer. And one of the remarkable things about evolutionary science is that continues to happen. It's one of, I think, the ultimate proofs that I don't understand how creationists can get around. But I think he's saying in his matrix style model that simply somebody having that idea and making that prediction will cause that to happen. That will bring it into reality, because whatever we need to make reality consistent will manifest. Again, I worry a little bit that I'm actually making the argument better than it was. So that's the best I got, man. at trying to play devil's advocate.
Yeah, I can't. What he's trying to get across, I can't say he's wrong. I can't say no, that's not true. What my problem I'm trying to get across to him is, how do I know this is true? Why should I believe this? Most of it is just asserting that it's a dream or that we're in some sort of matrix. I've yet to be convinced by any real reason to believe this. There are some really good videos on, like, are we living in a simulation, or things like that. Is consciousness connected to higher dimensions? There's a lot of woo stuff that you got to be careful of watching too. But what he's presenting basically just is a non sequitur to me.
Yeah, I don't. There's just a whole lot of yours can't do this, can't. So just so people know, some of the older questions are getting cut off on how far back I can go on the live chat. But if you have any questions right now, it'd be great. Great questions. If you have questions for Jimmy, that would be the ideal time, because we still don't know if he's going to make it back in. So let's see here. He's not replied to my message. Have you gotten a message back from him?
He just contacted me on Facebook. I'm following it right now.
Yeah, and I just lost the name, but one of the comments was, our model predicts your model is wrong. Our model predicts transitional forms in the places your models predicts none. I don't think he actually made that argument. That would have been impressive.
What he's saying is your model's wrong, but my model predicts all the same predictions yours model makes.
Yeah,
And my model is right. So those predictions have to be right.
it seems like he's saying I have all of the exact same evidence and a lot of that evidence has the same conclusions, but then he's also going with things like, how do we know how old that rat is? Well, there's a lot of ways, but what a lot of people I don't think understand here is that we would accept evolution as true whether or not the fossil record existed at all, because genetics and DNA has already, independent of a fossil record, verified the theory of evolution. So I definitely have more questions I want to ask him. You said he contacted you on Facebook. Is he coming back?
Yeah, he said he lost his router. He's going to try to rejoin on his phone.
Gotcha. Okay. Here's hoping that works. If he needs me to send him a direct invite or anything, just tell him to drop his email address in the Facebook chat that we're all in. So I'll read off some of these questions, even though he's not here to answer them, but maybe he'll at least get it in the mind. Seraph64 asks, if his model explains the same as ours, what does his model explain that ours doesn't? Otherwise, I have a razor here. Is it Occam's razor? I hope everybody got the reference there. Let's see. Sorry, Old Scratch, because I'm not sure what you were responding to at the time, but he said by finding transitional forms between his baramins. I might have pronounced that word wrong. Oh, Mr. Atheist. Well, you just won me over for real this time. Glad you got the Morty reference. Thanks, Seraph. That just sounds like hard solves. Yeah, thank you for the super chat for Steve's liquid medicine. All super chats will go to him. None of this comes to me. And so buy the guy some NyQuil. Why don't you? Ask him what mechanism does his field of consciousness interact with all the other quantum fields we know of. Can he provide us with a Feynman diagram? Venn diagram, I think he means, or I'm wrong. Is there something called a Feynman diagram?
Feynman?
Yeah, Feynman diagram to demonstrate this interaction. I'm aware of a Venn diagram. Is that the same thing? And I just didn't know how to spell it. Do you know what kind of man SJ is into? Who's SJ? And I want to take a moment to make sure that I reiterate a point that you've been seeing me make on all the shows across all the channels recently. Steven Anderson is not a secret homosexual. I'm sorry that you won't get that, Jimmy. It's you had to see the show, I guess.
I've know the reference. I've been watching you guys.
You're awesome. Seraph says, in his model, reality is not real, is only an illusion. So his model replicates yours and debunks it at the same time. Yeah, that's kind of what I was talking about. Like the concept of just like everything manifests because the consciousness manifests it. And so it's an unfalsifiable claim with the claim that it being unfalsifiable means nothing. So what I'm going to do is to try and sex up this chat is I'm going to bring in a few friends and stuff because I don't know how long it's going to take. Once he's back in, we'll keep it primarily between the two of you, but at least the conversation can expand out there some because like I said, I hope he makes it back in, but right now I'm just trying to make this not all fall to shit, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I'm seeing how he's doing right now.
Okay, cool. Ocean, if you are interested in joining, go ahead and shoot me a message on Facebook Messenger so you come right up to the top of my list because for some reason I'm blanking on your first name right now. And I won't, don't worry, I'm not going to say it out loud. Oh, it's Tommy Tom. It's not Tommy Tom for the record. That'd be weird.
I think he might be done for the night, so we might need to get a couple other people in here and kind of continue it if you guys want.
Yeah, because I mean, there's definitely a conversation to be had here, and maybe we can try and get to the bottom of why we are pretty sure that his solipsism plus or light, I don't know which one you would go, is not the case. But I mean, obviously, there's yeah, I'm sorry. I'm trying to get these links out to people. So if you're in the live chat and we're already friends, shoot me a PM on either Twitter or Facebook Messenger, and we'll bring a few people in, and get it off.
I'm sure you can see why it's fun to talk to him.
Why it's what?
Why it's fun to talk to him. We've had some really fun, long, late night conversations.
Oh, it was a Feynman diagram. Yeah, I'm sorry. Other people are probably correcting me, but I just gotta. Okay, listen. I don't know what's going on in my head. Yeah. And then somebody was saying S.J. Thomason is a Christian apologist. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba-ba.
I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I think it's something, by Richard Feynman, the physicist.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not sure how to lay out a Richard Feynman diagram either. Zero says we'll never be friends after what he did to me on the sofa. So yeah, Ocean, send me a thing here and we'll get you in, because I think you'd be the most fun person to add sexiness to this. He's a polytheist. He believes in the Norse gods, but is also a really cool guy. He probably accepts evolution. I don't know if I've ever asked him the question directly, but if you want to join in, Ocean, that would be so.
I'm actually really.
Go ahead.
I'm really excited to actually meet Ocean, because I've seen some of his discussions and conversations, and Norse mythology, Norse culture, and I really would like to, ask him some questions about what he believes.
Yeah, I always have follow-up questions too. Let me see if. Sorry for the dead air here. So for those of you who might be just joining, we had a guy in here who was representing a sort of matrix theory thing. So it was really quite off the wall. It says it makes all the same predictions of evolution, except for that I don't get how it can make all the same predictions, since those predictions are based on the idea of this would have evolved to this, so we need to go find this in the middle. Because his model apparently would say that didn't happen. So the reasoning for making that prediction is completely out the door. Oh, that's right. That's your name. It's Isabel. I'm just kidding. Okay, cool. I'm sending the link to Ocean now. We'll get him in, and we'll. Sorry, Jamie. I thought I had already sent it to you. So we'll kind of take a little bit of a redirect here, and try and get this interesting. But again, if you're just we lost the guy who was on the other side of the debate. We're gonna try and sex this up a little bit. We'll probably go for maybe another 45 minutes at the most. We'll probably end at about half past the hour, but I don't want to leave you all with just flaccid on the bed, if you know what I mean. By the way, I'm not Steve McRae. I'm Mr. Atheist. And if you super chat right now, you can buy Steve McRae some NyQuil or whatever is going on with him, which my understanding is it's actually an impacted colon, and I'm the guy who impacted it. But here's the thing. If you have time, Ocean, did you not get the link? Yeah, okay. Yeah, I sent it back to you, Ocean. You should have it anyway. Yeah, he's sick tonight. We were having a debate about evolution versus non-evolution, moderated by myself, Mr. Atheist, filling in for Steve. And it was a pretty interesting thing so far. But I feel like right as we were getting past the foreplay, Virtual had to leave. So cool. It looks like Ocean will be landing here any moment, and we'll talk a little bit about polytheism, and we've got our friend Jamie coming in, I believe. Anybody else who has me on Twitter or Facebook, shoot me a message and we can bring you in, because were you saying it doesn't seem like Virtual is going to be able to reconnect?
No, and I just want to take this moment. I'm sure he'll watch this later. I want to thank him for coming on, having a conversation. We're having some tech issues, but it takes a little bit of bravery to come out, tell people what your opinion is, what you think is going on a live stream. So kudos, buddy. I hope we have a part 2 soon.
Yeah, I hope so too. We'll try and probably make it a little earlier or see what happens. I mean, obviously this will all be up to Steve because this is his channel, but I would like to see some of those ideas fleshed out. The idea that falsifiability is meaningless, then what isn't meaningless? I mean, really, that was something to me. That was an interesting position to take. And it seems like I wish we could have gotten it fleshed out because my suspicion is that the people who feel that way about their beliefs feel that way almost sourced in like a pride-ish sort of like the fact that it's non-falsifiable doesn't mean you should dismiss it because I also believe it and it's important to me. But yeah, it's not even just that it's unfalsifiable. It seems like he's created a model that is unfalsifiable by design. Every time somebody comes up with something, he doesn't look for an explanation. He looks for how is it unfalsifiable.
Exactly. That's what I've been trying to get to him. He's designed it so that I can't test. We could have some sort of simulation that we could possibly test, but the way he's constructed it, I don't know. I can't test it.
Yeah, exactly. I'd like to while we're waiting for hey Jamie. Oh, we got everybody here. Jamie, how are you, man?
Who is this non-gray bearded individual? Is this Steve? Are you doing time travel now? I mean,
yeah, I fell through the rabbit hole. I hope Steve's a handsome older guy. I hope people think I'm just a younger version of Steve. I've seen some pictures of him a little younger too. He was always much more handsome than I am.
He wouldn't have had as cool posters as you, the Wolverine poster and the Carmen Sandiego.
Okay, so I'm not gonna. I don't want to spoil anything, but after tomorrow's episode of Sunday Mass, and we'll talk. I can take a second to talk about all that stuff. After tomorrow's episode of Sunday Mass, my set is going to completely change. You're not going to see me live on for about a week. Carmen Sandiego's coming back with Wolverine, but the new set is going to be, I think, really cool. I'm basically taking all of my nerd stuff out of storage, and I'm just going to put it on the walls. That's my tactic here because I've got some helmets and stuff, and so yeah, that's what's going on. So if you aren't aware, Sunday Mass is a show where me and usually up to 3 other YouTubers, atheist YouTubers, we talk about the week's events and stuff. That'll be coming on again tomorrow over on my channel, Mr. Atheist. My main show is Dear Mr. Atheist, which is on Thursdays, and Steven and Kyle will be coming on together with. Shit, is that the day it's Holy Kool-Aid? I think that's the day Holy Kool-Aid is coming on. And this is Sunday the. Give me 2 seconds here. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you got it. I think that's Sunday the 22nd. I'm pretty sure. So yeah, I look forward to that. All the non-sect guys will be there. But I want to introduce the guy I was the most excited to join in, Jordan Peterson. Please say hello.
This is Jordan Peterson, and I've got a lot to say about metaphorical substrates today. It's really, really important that you check your metaphorical substrate every day. Going to a doctor, 2 fingers, all that's necessary. It's good. It's a valuable thing to do.
Now, if my metaphorical substrates are low, what should I do to raise them?
It's not low. It's too large that you got to worry about.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Right.
Mine, if anything, are undersized. So that's Ocean Keltoy, everybody, and he is our resident polytheist and perhaps one of the most tolerable theists I've ever been around. That's very likely true. Ocean, did you catch any of that back and
I caught
forth?
like a little bit of it. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
I'm never sure if I'm coming in, but I caught a little bit of it, and it took me probably about 10 minutes to figure out what was being talked about.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, I'm just disagreeing on what here? I don't even know. But yeah, okay. So it was weird because it seemed like he was kind of Hovendizing, but not I don't know. I was having trouble.
So I'm curious if you do you accept the evolutionary model as it's presented, or do you believe
No,
in any
it's
sort of
obviously
direction?
fucking wrong. Are you kidding me? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Well, some people though
I'm very pro science, so.
I knew that there are people. So, for example, when I was a Mormon, I said I was very pro-science, and that evolution was just the mechanism that God used. So, because He was aware of how it went, all events and pressures came
I
from
don't
Him.
think any God is using evolution. It's not. I don't like the idea of intelligent design is like interesting to me, but it's. I mean, I can take it or leave it. I don't really care.
Now,
It's
so the gods you believe in, and this is genuinely curiosity, but it'll sound like I'm trying to start a fight. But the
right.
gods you
Exactly.
believe in,
I can tell.
Thor, Odin, yeah, always. I always want a little shit show, but Thor, Odin, and the rest. Yes, the extent of my knowledge mostly comes from the Marvel films. I'm sorry,
I
but
can teach you some stuff if you want me to. That
another time. What I want to
Right.
know is, do these individuals resemble humans as has been traditionally represented? Because if they do, how could humans have come about without direction, with such that exceptionally large coincidence of similar representation? Or do humans and gods have the same origin in your polytheistic belief?
well, I mean, you might be able to say they have the same origin. I think they came out of the same primordial, in that, like, the universe came out of the same primordial as the gods. But as far as like whether or not the gods look like humans, I think that the stories that we have of the gods are pretty much are told by humans to humans, and part of the mechanism of those stories is giving them kind of a human image. I think that if we were to have an ontology about them, they would simply be immaterial beings, like kind of forces almost. So I wouldn't like. Does Thor actually have a hammer? I mean, there seems to be a lot of stuff in the stories that suggests that there's an entity that is Thor that has something, but whether or not it's like a five-fingered humanoid individual carrying around a hammer, I don't necessarily hold to that.
So would you
Same
acknowledge
with
that,
like Odin and Sleipnir or something like that.
and maybe I won't use the word acknowledge, would you, if you were to quote unquote meet Thor and he looked a lot like Chris Hemsworth, would you think, okay, now this is weird, or would you think it was a purposeful comfort thing for you, or what would be?
So I've thought about that. So in the stories in which Odin is typically the one that's appearing to people, he does so in the form of like an old man. He's the person who's interacting with him does not always realize that he's Thor, or that he's Odin rather, and that's something that I find kind of interesting. It's usually like kind of an old man sort of image, sometimes with a single eye, and the single eye thing is the wink towards the LOL wink toward the person reading the story. It's like, oh, this is Odin. Like the person reading the story kind of figures it out, but the hero doesn't always know. And part of the idea is Odin being in the stories as a shapeshifter might be doing something along the lines of projecting into a person's mind. He might be an illusion, so he's not physically there as a humanoid image, but that's the image that he's showing to the hero of the story, so that there's an understanding and ability to communicate there. And again, the way that this communication is usually done, as far as like when he's sitting there talking to somebody, it's done in a way which the person who's being talked to is usually unaware that it's Odin. Sometimes they are aware that it's Odin, but most of the time they're not.
I'm going to open up, because I'm also plugging something in here, but I'm going to open up the conversation. So Jamie and Jimmy, if you have questions for our resident polytheist, jump on in.
I definitely have questions. So this, I'm more fascinated. So because this sounds like the most badass crossover comic book I've ever heard, to have every cool ass god, on this planet. But
why does everybody do comic book shit with it? I'm just like, geez, man. Marvel's a thing, obviously, but like this is a very old religion. So whenever the comic book thing gets thrown around, I'm just like, damn it, are we doing this again?
After Jamie's question, I'll actually have a question related to that.
Well, what I was going to say is make your argument stronger, Ocean. Say that Marvel is an oracle, not just a thing.
Go.
But no, I was just curious. Just just to learn more about your position. You said that you are a big believer in science. What kind of led you down the path of the what we would traditionally call myth? This God myths. These legends.
So as far as like literal belief in the legends, I'm not like some sola scriptura Christian when it comes to the sagas. Uh, I think that, especially since from our perspective, a lot of the books that we have access to were written by Christians, so there has to be, it's almost necessary that there's flaws in them. But as far as like how I kind of came to it, I've mentioned a couple of times. I think I kind of went through this on Non Sequitur show once. That of one of my 2 times on there, that has to do with some personal experiences that I had of feeling an overwhelming presence in certain sacred sites in particularly Ireland and Scotland, that wound up drawing me into Celtic polytheism. That journey, it was like from Episcopalianism and Christianity into briefly through what might be considered atheism into Celtic polytheism, and then eventually into what I am now, which is more of a Germanic polytheist that is also into Druidry as well, which is Celtic polytheism. And that has a lot to do with like experiences during prayer, through community building. There's been a lot of like affirming points throughout the process of this sort of spiritual journey that I'm on. And I'm somebody that's I'm more interested in experimentation with spirituality than I am with like absolute empirical verification, which tends to be the objection to me, that I'm not an empiricist completely when it comes to this stuff.
Also, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you also have what I would at least call a healthy amount of doubts too. Not to say doubts in the way people go, "Oh, you're agnostic, so you think it might be possible."
Right.
More of the if someone were to demonstrate it to you somehow that it was untrue, there are standards that you feel to your satisfaction that could be done.
Yeah. Like if somebody were able to show me that the position is incoherent, or if somebody was to give me some kind of empiricism that shows that the gods don't exist, then that's
which isn't, I mean, that's not an easy thing for anyone to do, but
no.
But at least it's not the
I state my position as provisional.
Sure.
So, yeah, it's not like I've got the faith and the glory of Odin. It's not where I'm sitting.
You touched on a really good point that I wanted to just follow, piggyback on, is one of the things I've always kind of said through my deconversion from Christianity to atheism is that Christian, or a belief in a God or a spiritual belief is more of a mega belief. It has multiple pillars. Like there's a belief in scripture possibly, or there's a belief in prayer, or there's a belief in fellowship, similar stories that reinforce the belief, maybe a creation account, etc. And so generally you don't find a deconversion happening until all of those pillars have been knocked down. And the limited experience I have, the majority of people who are at that last step, the last step that they have is letting go of prayer or fellowship. And it's because it has that reaffirming, as you said, it affirms your beliefs.
I had to let go of both before going into a different religion, because the fellowship in Christianity is roundly rejected. Once you hit, once you like go into another religion, like say if I converted from Christianity to Islam, I'd need to give up the fellowship within Christianity before I go into Islam. I might not have to give up prayer in that instance, but given that from the prayer perspective, I'm still like, using prayer, so to speak, but I'm not, the entity that I've been praying to as a Christian would had to have been seen as, well, this wasn't fruitful. So, and the fellowship goes away. Like, I retain like a couple of friendships with people from my days as a Christian, but not very many. And because like once you leave a church or something, there's a lot of relationships that get kind of burned when it's like, well, no, I don't believe the same thing you do as anymore.
Preach.
That's the Mormon knows.
Yep. I sure fucking do.
There's the door.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just sorry, Jimmy. I just wanted to say the
Sorry to
point
interrupt
about,
you. I just wanted to clarify that real quick because
no, just
I
about
know what
prayer.
you're talking about though.
Yeah, and just about prayer specifically, while I don't believe that prayers are actually doing anything from a tangible or, changing reality, I look at it like it's a coincidence if it does go in the favor of the prayer. But what I do see a profound effect that I just don't deny, even as an atheist, is that it does affect the individual who's doing the praying. When the Philadelphia Eagles won, I heard a lot of my friends who said that were Eagles fans, when they won the Super Bowl, they go, well, it's because they all prayed together. And I believe that God blessed them for just being a team of faith. And I said, I don't think for a second that there was a God hearing their prayers. But the fact that they were praying together probably did have a profound impact on their ability to work together as a team. There's a lot of medical doctors, like family doctors, who will have signs up in their office that says a family that prays together stays together, that kind of stuff. Or they'll say, if you have diagnosed with cancer or something, there's doctors who will say, and I get that this sounds like anecdotal evidence. I'm not trying to go that way. I'm just speaking,
Well, Jamie,
just giving
Jamie, I
rhetorical.
wonder, do you think that thing with the Eagles was more profound than, say, like team exercises they could have done other than prayer? Even as simple as like the guy does the pep talk, they all put their hands in and they're yelling chants at the same time. Do you think it is necessarily more profound, or it was just a group exercise that did like start the moment of now we're all working together?
You can
From my perspective,
it.
that kind of stuff is spirituality. So like I'm hesitant to say that it's like, I don't know, that that's more effective or less effective than prayer, and that that's like operating against the argument for prayer, because like those kind of like moments of cultural community, I believe that there is a spirituality to that, and it might be between the humans that are there, but it's.
What about you, Jamie?
So you're taking the position that we as humans, you're not using the term spirituality as like an analogy to describe this thing that we don't quite yet have a lot of science to explain, but is somewhat visible, or you can perceive it, or using spirituality in a literal sense, like there are actual spiritual mediums within our bodies that are communicating with other human beings.
I mean, it depends on what your view on consciousness is, I guess, because if you,
I'm asking what your view is.
A conversation between people, from my perspective, would be somewhat of a spiritual experience because you have two people talking to each other. But
let's bring Jimmy in on this too, because I feel like we've taken the whole show away from him, and I know he had questions for you as well.
I want to get into this for a second real quick, because this is a position that I've kind of come to recently. I haven't really gone into on anything else. That I was talking with a friend of mine about this in the pagan group I'm a part of, that what Christianity kind of wound up doing is trying to create a religion that is separate from culture, that is a cross-cultural set of ideas that can lift out of one, pop into another. Whereas before that, religion was very much ingrained in culture, and things like the pep talk and the pumping up that happens kind of before that, the Spartan cry from the 300 movie, all those would be seen as like spiritual experiences according to pre-Christian traditions. But there's like an interaction between people as being seen as part of the religion, as well as interaction between people and gods as part of the interaction. There wasn't a huge distinction in the view on that with regards to spirituality in the ancient world. But go ahead. Does that make sense to you?
Right now, I'm mostly on my end just trying to let people in a little bit more on your detailed beliefs. I'm not going to push back.
Right, I got you.
Have you heard of this thing called street epistemology? I'd like to try that with you. So Jimmy, you said you had some questions. You wanted to meet Ocean, so I'll give the floor to you now.
Yeah. So, what kind of rituals do you do in this religion of yours? Like, for instance, I'm not really religious, but one thing I do observe is the equinoxes and the solstice. This summer, the longest day of the year, the 3 days, I went out, I stargazed, I just took a moment to appreciate nature. Like, how do you view, say, astronomical events in a religious tone in your religion?
All right, so I felt like there was two questions there about what rituals that we do, and then the last bit seemed distinct from that. Is that Can you clarify a little bit?
Well,
Because there's like
well, I was trying to make a connection with something that I do. I don't do it for any really religious region. Just something that I enjoy. I take a moment to appreciate nature, but it's based off of something that you could consider religious or pagan. I'm observing the solstices. I'm using the astronomical calendar. What
right,
meaning
but
do
but
you
kind of
get
looking
out
at
of
it
it?
and recording it, I guess. Well, with huh. So
Do
as
you
far as
get
like, go ahead.
what is from your religious point of view, what kind of meaning do you ascribe to those kind of events of just, like holidays, taking a time to stop, meet friends, meet family? For me, I'm just observing the cool alignment. I think it's really cool. Or the longest day, just to know that fact and how we figure it out. But like from a religious context, how do you view like summer solstice?
Um, so summer solstice I'm with a more or less a church of pagans in Georgia, and what we did for summer solstice was there was a prayer gathering for some of our members that are in hospital right now, and beyond that, it was mostly a gathering of friends and community. And often when we hold gatherings like this, there is what we call a bloat, which is a it's essentially us standing in a circle, and then there's a ritual that's performed that is in honor to a god or a goddess. Um, Recently, we did one of these events in honor of Freya, which is the a feminine divine entity in Norse mythology. So, um, and the rituals, like as far as like what we actually do in those rituals, vary from who's being celebrated. Uh, and then, but rituals will go from being like your large group rituals, like a bloat, into your small personal hearth rituals, which would be uh, what you're practicing at home with a personal altar of some kind and gods that you're fostering a relationship with. And that's getting this conversation is obviously going outside of the epistemology conversations, which is usually what I have on the air. It seems to be more about the practice, which I'm in favor of. I like that this conversation is not
Yeah,
sticking to that as much as possible.
Yeah.
with a lot of things, it's like I know I have yet to see a Christian say a belief they have in the last year or two that I haven't heard some Christian already tell me. In other words, there's only so much of a range of Christians all exist within a spectrum, but the spectrum has a hard boundary.
Right.
Um, to a lesser extent, I have that with Islam, though there's plenty about Islam I don't know, but that boundary still exists too. And probably that I would probably say your boundary exists as well. However, I have no idea what continent they're on. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of. It's still interesting, and your beliefs don't annoy the shit out of me, like a lot of fucking Christian. Like I'm not. I mean,
I'm not telling anybody that their sexuality is bad, that
right.
kind of crap.
If
Yeah.
there is a faith aspect to your belief, I could have the argument all night that unless you have a good reason to utilize faith beyond that it feels good, like you were talking about those prayer experiences, I had very similar ones in Salt Lake City as a Mormon. We could have that whole argument all night about whether or not you, as I was getting into earlier, are perpetuating the idea that faith is a reasonable foundation, but that isn't the
I don't think
first
that it
battle I
is.
want to have.
But yeah, I don't want to. We could go there, but I think that it's good that we're not going there for
Yeah,
now. Because that's something. If you want to see me going into that, again on the non sequitur show, me and Eric kind of went back and forth on that particular subject pretty hard.
If there's
and
an
it was a
after
good
party
conversation.
tomorrow, you should show up for that because I'm going to be apparently hashing this again. So this last Thursday, I actually made that point in my video, and it was specifically directed toward Christians and to Muslims, though I don't know if I said that word, but it would be any theistic faith-based belief, and it was the idea that if you have, if faith is your foundation, which I think most, if not all, theistic beliefs do have as their foundation, then you are perpetuating the idea that that is an acceptable foundation. So if you have time and there's an after party tomorrow, because it's already 3 versus 3 tomorrow on the main show, it'd be cool if you showed up. It sounds like you'd be on my side, which would be weird because then I feel like I'd be throwing questions at you like, are you really on my side? But who knows?
That's kind of a thing with me, is that half the time I'm on the theist side, half the time I'm on the atheist side.
Yeah.
So I've got good friends on both sides of that conversation, but I find myself like, I don't know, it just depends on what's being argued. If it's about epistemology, I can still have agreements on both sides, but I think I ultimately, foundationally, will agree more with the Christian.
Yeah.
But when it comes to science arguments, holy shit, Christians, get your shit together.
Yeah. I'm going to let the conversation keep going with you guys, but I just want to say to the live chat again, if you have questions, now my guess would be they'd be for Ocean. So about polytheism, about Thor, whatever.
I saw a good one in the chat a second ago, which was about homosexuality and
whether or not they care
Norse
or not.
polytheism. Yeah.
Take that in a second, but do tag me at Mr. Atheist when you're writing that comment, so I see the little highlighter next to it, and we'll throw those questions in. And if you've joined since then and have wondered what happened to Steve, I murdered him, and this is my show now. All right. So what about that with how do the Norse gods feel about? I feel like I could answer this. It would be so outside the realm of anything they give a shit about that it doesn't even show up on their radar, right?
As far as the gods itself, or gods themselves, so to speak, it's not really a thing that they give a shit about. That's right there with it. It's so, however, and this is the part that a lot of heathens get a little uncomfortable talking about, because it is a frustrating topic. Culturally, in the religion that we're reconstructing, there was a sort of looking down upon homosexuality, particularly being the person who's receiving. So there is that sort of cultural thing that's there. It was seen as less than manly, or dishonorable even. And there's a lot of focus on honor in the heathen tradition. That being said, it's not something that is necessary for the religion. It's something that a lot of people that practice in the modern context either don't even know about, or know about and disagree with. And that disagreement is fine in our tradition. But are some stories that point out where it's like, this is seen as a negative. However, to kind of like hop back and forth on that, as far as like what the God's perspective on that was, there's a magical practice in the heathen tradition known as Sether, which is it's a practice that has to do with altering fate. And so what from the perspective of the mythology, there's these entities called Norns that are like weaving fate. And it's, all the Norns are female because there's that weaving thing is sort of a like feminine trait. And the magic that is associated with it, known as Sether, is heavily associated with feminine identity and weaving. So men practicing it was seen as a, what are you doing? That's a womanly thing. And beyond that, there was connotations in the magical practice of sort of inviting spirits into you, and there was a sexual aspect of it that involved penetration. So from that perspective, it was seen, again, you're on the receiving end. As a male, what are you doing practicing this magical practice? And on top of that, Harold Finehair, who's or Fairhair, depending on your translation, who's a character in the Vikings show, his son was a practicer of Sether, and he was executed for it. His father saw this and was just incredibly angry about it. He thought it brought dishonor into his family, and he was executed for it. Now, from going back into the mythology perspective, the goddess that brought the idea of Sether to the gods, according to the narrative, is Freya, who's a feminine divine. She teaches it, however, to Odin. And so this like look down upon feminine practice is also practiced by the Allfather, who is one that as an image is seen as incredibly like masculine, manly, and so on, despite the fact that he practices this this practice that is seen as like less than manly. So you can extrapolate from that. It's like, well, this was probably more controversial or more complicated than you would suspect.
Right.
So if somebody is like following Odin and is also a practitioner of Sether and is gay, from a religious perspective, there's a consistency there. It makes sense.
So Iron Charioteer wants to know if there is a Satan figure in your religion and who it is. And by the way, to anybody who's trying to tag me, there is no period after Mr. because I have to deal with YouTube's fucking shit.
Stupid shit. Yeah.
Yep.
Wasn't Fenrir basically Satan? The
Loki
wolf?
is. Fenrir is also considered a kind of Satan figure. Hel is sometimes considered one. Same with the Jormungandr, which is
You
the,
just made
the
that
world
word
serpent.
up. I'm just
No, that's a real
That's a
thing.
thing.
That's a real thing.
I can flip my tongue
You're-
around too.
Jormungandr. But
Well, hell was more neutral, wasn't she?
except with the
Dishonored dead.
Ragnarok, but I'll get into that for a second. So
no, we've all seen
Hell-
the movie.
Hel, Jormungandr,
Yeah,
and
great movie.
Fenrir are all offspring of Loki, which the movie got wrong.
Well, they,
Mhm.
yeah.
Shut your mouth, Ocean.
Artistic license.
Ocean, actually,
Uh,
I have a question related to the movie. So let me let you end your thing about, or not end, but
Yeah, no,
say your answer about if there's a Satan thing. But then I have a question that I think
For the
will relate
films?
to the movies that you won't hate.
Okay, so
Yeah,
sounds good. So the whole idea of Ragnarok is this like end of the world thing. All the gods die. There's a lot of like Christ symbolism and all this other stuff in there. And then Loki's like leading this attack against the gods. It's really it's very strange. And beyond that, it's also it doesn't fit with the rest of the religion. Now, the only place that Ragnarok and Loki's offspring appear in is Icelandic tradition, which is the part that was written. This is the only tradition that was written down specifically by Christians. With the rest of the traditions across the heathen world, which would be Northern Europe, Scandinavia, Northern Germany, and then going into a little bit into Eastern Europe, those concepts don't exist in that lineage of tradition at all.
Well,
So
one second, Ocean. Which one of the gods hid the man and the woman in the tree at the end of Ragnarok to come back out and repopulate the world?
I'm not quite sure, actually.
I can't
Like
remember.
I know there's like a I'm not even sure. I can't remember which gods survived. I know that one of them is Odin's son, and there's another one that's or somehow. But I'm not somebody who puts any stock in Ragnarok because of this problem, where it seems to be a Christian creation, and Loki as well seems to be a Christian creation. That's sort of a moving of the devil into Norse mythology. Now, the reason why this was a thing was that Christianity at the time saw Christian symbolism in other religions as an affirmation of Christianity, that Jesus was showing up in other traditions. This is the reason why we have Balder, and this is also a reason why we have a lot of the arguments that are used by people that are proponents of Zeitgeist. So you have like all these Jesus figures showing up. Now, Christianity was like, hey, look, this is Jesus is here, Jesus is here, Jesus is here. So this is all affirmation. Now we look at it as like, well, this is just cultural evolution. But that wasn't the line of thought at the time. My suspicion, and the suspicion of a lot of others as well, is that Loki, Ragnarok, and to an extent Loki's offspring, with the exception of probably Hel, are creations of Christians inserting their ideas into this religion.
Well, that's what it
in
feels
order
like.
to make it more similar to Christianity. so that
Yeah.
it's an affirmation.
So relating the question back to the comic books, as I said, I would in a way that hopefully you don't hate. And I think you actually already answered this, but it might not be the case for other people who come to the conclusion as you. Even if they are completely inaccurate, which obviously they are, to the mythology, does them existing as something the population can consume, did that in any way even make it possible for you to be exposed to these ideas? Is any press bad press?
I converted before the those movies came out, but
Not before the comic books, for example.
no, not before the comic books. I'm not that old.
Yeah.
But actually, when did the first Thor movie come out? I don't even know.
Oh
It
shit!
was an earlier one in the 70s or
No.
80s.
No,
Didn't do
no.
well.
Oh yeah, there was Thor versus Hulk. Back
Yeah.
in the-
Thor
Yeah.
2011.
Yeah, you're talking about the one that
I'm talking
followed
about the
that the
Marvel
Iron
one.
Man movie set up.
Yeah. No, I'm not talking about the animated stuff. I didn't have.
No, that
Never
wasn't
watched it.
animated. You remember
was
the
real.
Rigno Hulk show, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay,
Wait,
there
what?
was
Yeah, it
Thor
was-
showed up in that.
Oh!
Yeah, it was
Are
the
you
same
serious?
Thor that was in Ventures in Babysitting. That cheesy ass.
Yeah,
thing.
that guy. That guy was Thor in
So,
the Thor versus
I did
Hulk.
not realize that. I need to see this now.
Ocean,
Okay.
would you like to? I was
Let me-
going to
I'll
say
answer
look
the
into
question.
the camera, but you don't. You don't have the camera active. But if you had your camera active, would you be looking into the camera? And would you like to issue a thank you to Lou Ferrigno for keeping your religion alive? He won't be able to hear it, but whatever.
I don't even know who is that. What?
Lou Ferrigno, the old Hulk.
Oh,
And
yeah.
now you just made him angry. And anything I know about him, he doesn't like. You wouldn't like him if he was.
Yeah.
That's
Who
what
was
I
the actor
hear.
who played the Banner version of him?
That was crap.
I want to answer the question. though.
Okay, yeah, go ahead,
But
sorry.
I've
Go
also
ahead.
forgotten the question. Oh, as far as like keeping the religion alive, kind of thing.
Yeah.
What? So there's a couple of things. First, I know there's a lot of people that are offended by the movies. I'm not offended by the movies. I think that they're great. I have a lot of fun with them. I think, for example, casting Idris Elba as the White God Heimdall is hilarious. I
Bill
love
Bixby.
Yeah.
that. And
Do you think that Kevin Feige might be Loki? He's the
What?
director, right? Okay. Anyway, fine. Go ahead.
all right. Anyway,
Yeah.
God damn it, Mystery.
it does sometimes get like a conversation started, and it does get people kind of interested in it, and that's something that is kind of neat. Where it does also provide like a ground level for a lot of people to be like to start asking questions. It's like, well, because a lot of conversations that I have where we're actually talking about the belief system is comparing from the movie. Okay, well, what's the same in the movie and what's different in the movie? And the truth is that a lot of it's fucking different. But there are some similarities as far as how the stories are told, such as the friendship between Thor and Loki, and some of the relationships between the gods. Those things are all there, and that's something that's a good starting point. People have like an image in the conversation to be able to kind of draw from and then ask questions about similarities. And from that perspective, it's useful. Another thing that's fun is that from when Thor Ragnarok came out in the theaters, I went to see it with a friend of mine who's Muslim,
Mm-hmm.
and we had a fucking ball just talking theology because we were one of the few people in the theater. It was like 5 people in the theater, and he and I were just went to see it along with my brother, and we just had a ball talking theology about with reference to the films, like what they were kind of getting right as far as character, what they were completely fucking up, and he's laughing and learning at the same time. It was a good time. So from that perspective, it's also it's worth. They're fun movies,
Mm-hmm.
and
So
I'm not going to waste time being offended by them.
Now,
your-
Ocean, you did this in the theater. You actually were discussing this, and you didn't get popcorn thrown at you or nothing.
No. We were first. Nobody else was fucking nearby, and we were pretty low key about it. So
I was gonna say you're the worst kind of people to be in the theater.
no, I hate when other people talk in the theater. But in that case, it was one of those things where it's like, there's nobody fucking else here, and we're not being too loud, so it wasn't really a big deal.
Last
Now-
time I saw that was when I went and saw Lord of the Rings. I definitely threw popcorn that
I
day.
saw Jurassic Park 3, and there was a woman that was sitting behind me that apparently only spoke French and brought a translator with her. The theater was full.
Good. Good.
The theater was slam packed, and there's this lady repeating every line that's spoken in the movie in French to the person next to her.
The funny thing is, it probably was a practical joke and is on some shitty YouTube channel somewhere. They're not even repeating the lines. It's like that. Have you ever seen those times, a few times in the past, like major political heads, like presidents, there will be somebody doing sign language, and then an expert will come on and be like, yeah, they're not actually saying anything. This is nonsense. It means nothing. Now, in your worldview,
jacking off, yeah.
in your worldview, Ocean.
When the movie ended, though, the lady next to me stood up and started yelling at her, just like, she had a lot of attitude.
I hope she yelled at her in French. Did the translator help then?
They just kind of stood there staring blankly, and then the translator looked very embarrassed. So
it would have been funny
fine
for the translator to then pretend that she didn't speak English. Sorry, no English. Now, in your worldview, Ocean, and Jimmy will probably want to hear your response to this as well. Is it possible for a rat to eventually become Splinter from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
Not through a long,
with as much pizza as you want.
Not unless it's through a long and involved evolutionary process.
That was the part. Oh, I know people screen cap faces people make on Steve's show. So I tried not to do any faces worth screen capping, and I felt myself do one and went, here's hoping everyone missed that. Because it might not have been right then, but it was around then where I just
Was that in this show?
Yeah, something he said made me go, whoa.
Your face is always worth screen capping, Mr. Atheist.
Aw, shucks. Jimmy,
That sounded a tad sexual.
Jimmy, did you have any other questions for Ocean? We'll go down the line. We'll start with Jimmy if you have any. Then we'll do Jammy and Clockwork, and then we'll probably wrap this bad boy up.
I can't think of any questions right now. I have really enjoyed listening to you. Norse mythology, Norse culture. I'm on my mother's side. I'm Norwegian, Swedish, and so that stuff I really do want to get more into. But I'll be honest, I don't know a lot about that stuff. So it's interesting to listen to you talk about it.
Let me suggest a book if you want to just kind of get into the stories. I always suggest to people that are like looking into the structure of the religion itself. There is a book called A Practical Heathen's Guide to Asatru by I don't know how to pronounce this one's name. It's Patricia. I'm going to give it a shot. Lefebvre? Yeah. Lafayllve, but Patricia M, however you say that. But it's a Practical Heathen's Guide to Asatru, Asatru, which is a popular name for the religion. Beyond that, there's Kevin, I believe is Crossley Holland. Norse Myths is just a straight retelling of the myths from the Eddas. And there's also another book by Daniel McCoy called Viking Spirit that is a really good introductory to Norse culture from a more historical perspective rather than from a religious structure perspective. And it also includes a lot of the stories themselves.
Shoot me well, I'm sure we're gonna talk again, but I'm gonna ask you for that list again on just later.
The
on Facebook, yeah, or something,
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah. And
Sure.
I think we're Twitter friends and stuff too. Jamie, did you have anything else you wanted to ask him?
Yeah, there's one thing. I want to know, there is this one creation myth that I want to know, is it accurate or am I entirely off base? Is this part of something that you believe in? There's this creation myth that I've heard that there was a giant that formed from land of fire and land of ice that came together, and this giant cow licked it clean and nursed it.
Yeah,
that
that's
giant
the
eventually.
He sweats and forms a lot of other entities out from underneath
his bones
arms.
become the mountains.
That's after he's killed. So, the creation myth of the Norse is very, very strange. It's much weirder than
I've
a lot
seen
of other
some.
ones. As far
Yeah,
as
some-
like, I don't care about the creation argument as far as theism is concerned. I think the Kalam is a good argument, with the exception of all the traits that it puts on whatever entity causes the universe. My my personal perspective is more in line with the Greek creation myth of there being the primordial chaos from which everything kind of comes, and you can look at the Norse creation myth as a similar sort of thing. Um, but I think that it's like the cow and Ymir and the formation of the earth through the out of Ymir's skull and all that stuff. It's not. I have never met a heathen creationist that believes this kind of stuff literally. Like, it's just not something that exists. Um, like, none of us
No,
hold
it's
that
a
position, but it's an interesting. Seems like just like a pile of allegories that are really neat. Um, the Troth's
okay.
position,
So you
which is
don't
like,
take it. You, you don't take it literal. It's more of a story. You take lessons from it. That's what you get out of it.
from as far as the creation myth, yeah, like I think that that's the general purpose of creation myths. It's not supposed, like, um prior to the 1800s in Christianity, their creation myth wasn't seen as a scientific proposal. Um like, it was in some circles, but it was, as far as like this as a serious proposition of literal truth, that's a new idea. Um and creation myths in religions, it's not how they're generally seen. um but it's a really strange story, and I don't really know what I think of it. uh but that's not the part of the religion that's the reason why I follow it, or it's not the part of it that makes it interesting to me.
Yeah.
It's a point of
It's not
curiosity
main,
to me.
or it's not main thing that you really worry about. You're worried more about other aspects of the religion.
Right, I'm more
This
worried
part,
about like the practice and living life in it and all that kind of stuff. And again, I've never bumped into somebody where this is like an issue, or somebody that this is not an argument that takes place. Like, everybody just kind of accepts, like, no, the creation myth is not a literal retelling of how the universe came to be.
That myth sounds an awful lot like the American geology creation myth of Paul Bunyan in Blue, where it's like the mountains were formed
does,
because they
kinda,
wrestled,
doesn't it?
and yeah,
Um,
cleared out the forest.
That's funny.
And beyond that, there's another entity that's licked out of the ice by the cow, that is considered Odin's father as well.
Hmm.
So, like, take that where you want it to, where you want to with it. It's definitely one of the stranger parts. But the thing that some of the things that I find interesting about it when you get into creation conversations, is that out of this mythos comes a construction of a world that is like multiple universes, that there's this sort of tree that's branching out of a primordial that's growing universes, and that there's an expansion that's taking place. And
Were
you
you
could
talking
tailor that
about?
and say, like, hey, this is kind of like a multiverse sort of thing, which seems to be a relevant theory. But I wouldn't say that we should believe in the multiverse because of the Norse creation myth. And I don't think that the Norse creation myth was necessarily
First
told by people
establishment.
who knew about it, right?
Right. Which, I mean, that's the sort of biblical apologetics you get, which is, oh, look at this, how this clearly means that. No, it doesn't. If they fucking knew that that's what it was, they would have used much less vague terminology.
My perspective is to argue this stuff honestly, and that's just not
Right.
a good position.
Jamie, did you have any questions left?
Yeah, what's this non sequitur show you keep mentioning? I've never heard of it. No,
God
it
damn it,
sucks.
man.
Don't
God
watch it.
damn it,
Don't
man.
subscribe. That's what Kyle always says. Do anything else.
Never follow.
Yeah.
No, I just wanted to touch on that last point, Jimmy, you made, was the and there's two Jimmys and a Jammy.
I
This
know.
is
It's
Anyways,
fucked.
so I was talking to a person probably 3 months ago about a literal interpretation of the King James Bible, and how, going with the assumption that it's completely inspired, there was a supernatural intervention that took place to write it. And I was talking about how when I was subscribed to a Christian religion, that it made sense to me if you're going to start from that position, that you use a dictionary from the time period that that English was written, right? And
Right.
so one of the things that I had studied, or shouldn't say studied, I just kind of discovered was
Did you get into
they
Strong's Concordance then? I guess is that.
I didn't go that far with it. I just figured, okay, if we're going with the premise that God inspired this book for English speaking people to read without any issues, then I should be able to just read the English, and I just need an English dictionary. But I one of the things I found was in Genesis chapter 1, it says that God told the fish, "Be fruitful, multiply, and fill the waters." But then to Adam and Eve, and also Noah and his wife, he said, "Be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth." And when you just read the word replenish, you think, oh, do you mean fill it again? But when you look up a 1600s dictionary, the word replenish means fill without measure, not fill again. So I thought it was interesting, like, oh, you're telling the
Fucking
fish
words
that,
and they're changing and shit.
yeah, yeah. So I said, okay, I remember back then going, wow, it's like God was smart enough to say, okay, put only now that I think about this, there's going to be creationists who are going to steal my argument and say that but anyways, it was
Well, I
the
don't know
idea
what
that,
it means to finish
Don't
something.
equip don't equip the theist. Ocean already does that.
I
but it
do
was the,
occasionally. It's true.
Yeah.
it was the idea that God's telling the fish, hey, look, at if you multiply too much, you're going to kill yourselves, because there's a per fish square cubic inch thing that you got to worry about, or cubic meter or whatever. But with the humans, it's like, no, irresponsibly, just replenish the earth. The food supply will be good. Think not of tomorrow. Does a sparrow worry about how it's going to eat? Kind of a thing.
Oh,
So, just as an example, it's like, wow, these words meant something else back then. So when you look at like the creation story, you said, it wasn't until the 1800s when it really became scientific. It kind of went the other way. I don't know if you're familiar with this idea called the gap theory by, I think it was Charles Larkin, if I remember, around the 1800s. But basically, the English language changed, replenishment filled again, and all of a sudden he said, "God damn, I don't know if he said God damn, but there's a gap between Genesis 1:1 and Genesis 1:2, and it's millions and millions of years, and that's how we can explain this scientific rhetoric, I guess, or stance that the Earth is old, while also justifying a 6-day creation."
I just go with last Thursdayism.
He would have used more clear language, but there's problems. Like in talking about the reproduction of humans, he might have looked down and said, just go ham, but kosher Jews. Anyway, good night, everybody. I'm never coming back. No. So Clockwork, or did you get the response you wanted there, Jamie, or was there a question on the end of that?
Well, actually, because Clock's in here, I got to ask the room real quick. I apologize for derailing for a second, but I wanted to ask. We were talking earlier about the Incredible Hulk TV series. Is anybody in this hangout a Dream Theater fan?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I met Dream Theater at one of their shows, did the whole VIP thing, and I got to talk to Jordan, the keyboard player, about the song "The X Factor" on the Astonishing album, and how it is a word-for-word melody exact copy of "The Lonely Man," which was the outro played in Incredible Hulk TV series. Yeah, it is. I mean, no for no. So I go, I'm like, I'm thinking I'm going to get him laughing. I'm not at all trying to apply that he copied the song, but I was just the idea that, this is what happens when you have a finite number of notes and durations. You're going to eventually, by coincidence, just copy somebody. And so I'm bringing it up to him thinking, this is going to be a good conversation. He looked straight at my face and he was like, "I don't watch TV." But I thought, Clock, you'd appreciate that with your music. Okay,
I do.
I'll let it go.
Clock,
It was nice talking to you, though, Ocean.
We'll give you the last thing, Clock, and
Good
then I'm
talking with
gonna close this out.
Hey, wait. Do you have the shield from Legend of Zelda behind you, Mr. Atheist?
Yeah, I do. You got that just from the tip. Just the tip.
Just a tip.
Actually, there's a lot. I'm seeing a lot more than the tip.
Yeah.
But that's always what just the tip means, though, right?
Yeah. That's generally what we mean by the tip. Yeah. Like I said, the next set, the next set you'll all get to see, will have a lot more nerd stuff in it. We're emptying closets, spring cleaning, but in a nice way, and during the summer. Well,
You
Well-
goddamn nerd.
I know it. Thank you, everybody, for joining tonight. Sorry Steve wasn't here and that I had to, or that I am the time-traveled version of Steve, or whatever you want to go with. But in fact, I am Mr. Atheist. You'll be able to catch me tomorrow on the Non Sequitur Show, which is an amazing show where I will be debating for the 4th time this week whether or not faith is a reasonable foundation and whether or not faith foundation beliefs are perpetuate other faith foundation beliefs. You can find my show, Mr. Atheist, at Dear Mr. Atheist. A special shout out to my friend Alexander, who is listening and a dear, dear person to me. And before we go, I would really love to hear Jordan Peterson say the line. So, Ocean,
look,
I
think that I want to address some of this stuff with you because I know that you're against. You seem to be against me on a lot of things, but if you would just simply watch 200,000 hours of lectures that I have, you'll understand what I'm saying.
Exactly.
That's
I'll
all you
get the
have
full
to do.
context.
That's it.
Jordan, I don't know if you saw my show this week, but we did a PSA about Steve Anderson, and I think it would complete my life, and I probably wouldn't feel the need to say it again, though I know it's on tomorrow's episode of Sunday Mass as well, but that was pre-recorded.
I did hear you on Talk Heathen discussing me.
And that was, we were discussing, we did a video with myself, Matt Dillahunty, the Talk Heathen Guys, Genetically Modified Skeptic. There's a video on my channel that is a game show where we try to identify when it is Jordan Peterson in a word simulator, a word salad simulator. But what I'd like to hear Jordan Peterson say, and we will go out on this, is that, and I'll just say it first with the full emotion I need, Steven Anderson is not a secret homosexual.
Steven Anderson is not a secret homosexual.